everybody. On behalf of the Foundation, I'm very pleased to welcome you to today's broadcast. It's the first in a new series that the Foundation is providing for the community. It's called Planning for the Unpredictable. The fires in LA were a wake-up call for all of us because we realized that wildfires could impact Laguna Woods as well. And it was important for us to understand that and to be prepared. The series, Planning for the Unpredictable, will look at different aspects of emergency preparedness. And you will meet later this morning or today, Chief Nuñez, who's the village's Director of Security. But before you meet him, I just want to make sure that everybody knows what the Foundation is. I'm sure everybody does. It's the village's own local charity. We're the organization that steps in and helps residents when they have a financial hardship. We provide temporary financial assistance through social services. Our motto is neighbors helping neighbors. More recently, we have expanded our focus to provide a little bit more than financial assistance. We're renting emergency response devices for residents. We're providing fall prevention classes with memorial care. And more recently, we've been helping residents purchase hearing aids. I'm Marcy Scheimel, the president of the Foundation. And I have to tell you, I'm sure like many of you, the LA wildfires frightened me because I realized they could come here. And I needed to better understand how to prepare. So I've invited Chief Eric Nuñez, the village's Director of Security, to discuss some of the related issues with me today so that you can benefit from his input. He will discuss some of the measures that the village is taking. He will talk about the agencies that the village will work with in the event of an emergency. He will talk about what to expect if evacuation should ever become necessary. And most important, he will talk about measures that we as residents can take to protect ourselves. Thank you very much for coming today. How long have you been with the village?
Well, first of all, thank you, Marcy. This is a great opportunity, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you. I've been with the village, actually, April 11th will make 3 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure that all the residents know you, or they may have seen photos of you or seen you mentioned in the Globe. Can you tell us a little bit about your background?
Sure. And I'm certain that most of them probably don't know me. It's just the way it is. It was the same way as when I worked for cities. I was in law enforcement for 31 years. During that 30 years, I started off as a police officer, as you would, and then promoted through the ranks, and then eventually I became the chief of police for the city of La Palma. And then I held the chief title there until about 5 years after receiving it. I was appointed by the city manager, and then I moved on to the city of Los Alamitos, where I was their chief for 6 years. Served in a number of capacities in that role, along with being the president of the California Police Chiefs Association, which is an association that represents all 333 chiefs of police throughout the state of California through legislation, training, and career development, professional development courses. But probably what made me a good fit, I believe, when they were looking to make the replacement for this position was that I had some experience as the emergency services coordinator for the city, well, both cities, but primarily for the city of La Palma. And I served in that role for 8 years, I believe. And what that was is that I was the guy that coordinated our emergency operations center, did exercises for the city and ran our employees through these exercises to better prepare for man-made or natural disasters.
Have you been involved with larger scale emergencies?
Not in the management of those, so to speak, but I have worked in the LA riots of the 92, and that was a really large, full-scale situation. And then I also worked during the Laguna fires in the 90s, and I was here, and my deployment here was to safeguard residents, specific residents from looters and people that would be exploiting or taking advantage of the chaos that was going on during that time. But I had seen that operation unfold, and I've been around that. And then and actually a number of the earthquakes that we had and some of the training, I had served on what they call the operational area for the County of Orange, and up on the hill, they call it, and and I sat in the county's EOC and at different positions.
Given that you're here now in Laguna Woods, if we had an emergency such as a wildfire, what would be the role of security?
Well, in a wildfire situation, you know, obviously the primary jurisdiction is the Orange County Fire Authority. So they would be telling us right away, you know, the origin of the fire, the spread of the fire, and what we can expect. Our role in that situation is to work with the Orange County Sheriff's Department, because the Orange County Sheriff's Department isn't the people that formulate the evacuation plan, say, for a community like this or any community that they would have jurisdiction over. It's the Orange County Fire Authority. But in order to execute that, they need the boots on the ground, so to speak, and they would have the Orange County Sheriff's Department actually making notifications around the neighborhoods, telling people that they need to evacuate. We would assist in that evacuation process and in a number of ways, either helping to facilitate notifications, mass notifications, and or we would also be looking at if they have certain areas they have blocked off on the roadways, we would be closing gates so that people would not egress from their residence through those gates that they would normally go through to evacuate.
Okay, you mentioned the Orange County Fire Authority.
Yes.
I think everybody in the village knows about our local firehouse. Mm-hmm. I know a lot of clubs, when they have special events and have food left over, bring it over to the firehouse at night. Is that part of the Orange County Fire Authority? What is the Fire Authority?
Sure. The Fire Authority is, you know, they used to call it the Orange County Fire Department at one time, and then they made it formalized into the Fire Authority. And what they are is all of the station houses, like ours is 22, Station House 22, but it's all the station houses that they have jurisdiction over, because some cities have their own fire department. And then those who don't obviously use the Orange County Fire Authority as their...
So we have, the city of Laguna Woods has elected to go with the Orange County Fire Authority?
Yes. Yeah.
And they're the group that would make a determination if an evacuation was necessary?
Yes, so they would be the ones, and especially like when you gave the example of the wildland type fires, right? Because they know where they want you to evacuate, you know, well, what is in harm's way and what needs to get out of harm's way. And so they would make those notifications early on. And then they would be coordinating with the Sheriff's Department and saying, hey, we need you guys to send people down here at Laguna Woods Village, say, and make sure that they know that they have to get east of here or west of here, wherever the fires are at, away from there.
Okay. I live here.
Okay.
How would I know that evacuation was called, that it was necessary?
Yeah, there are a couple ways. We have a code red notification system here that's our in-house system that we would send out messages, whether they're emails or text messages to folks. That's why it's important to sign up for code red and get that notification. You would also get it because the Sheriff's Department typically in the evacuations that I've been a part of are getting on their PA system, meaning their public address system on their cars that they're driving, and making an announcement, like with a bullhorn type thing. And they make the announcement so that everybody can hear them, telling them, you need to evacuate, and please, safely, and they'll give the instruction on what to do. And then sometimes they can't get into certain areas, so they'll have to get out on foot and make those notifications. That's where we would come in, where they said, hey, can you go to this area and make sure that you have your folks, doing a door-to-door even, and we would even facilitate a door-to-door notification to our folks just to make sure people are out.
I know that many people in the village are concerned about the issue of evacuation because they have problems with mobility. How is that taken into account?
Well, what we recommend is that people pre-plan that event, because we have a number of people, and that number changes all the time, and they even change residents sometimes. So one of the things that we tell them is that, if you know that you're going to have a situation where you need assistance, please reach out to your neighbors, let them know, and so that they can assist with that. And then right now we have this program, right, that we had called the Good Neighbor Captain, and we're trying to revamp that program, and that would also be another form where we could utilize information like that, and so that the Good Neighbor Captain would be able to pass that along to any the receiving area that might need that information, because we try to get all this information funneled to one location, and then we would pick up that information and then provide that to the people that are actually handling disasters, which is the city of Laguna Woods. They have their emergency operations plan and their emergency operations center, where they're going to be allocating resources and requesting resources. So they need to know what they call it in the jargon SIT-STAT, but situational status reports. And we would be facilitating or assisting them in getting updated situational status reports.
Would they also take into account the city of Laguna Woods? Would they also take into account transportation needs for residents? Because we do have people here who live in the village who don't have their own transportation.
Yeah, we're actually in discussions about that right now, because we do have a small but effective transportation system with buses and such that could help facilitate some of that. But obviously when you have 18,000 people living here, and perhaps maybe 10% would have that kind of an issue, we would overrun that system really quickly. The Sheriff's Department also has potential of having buses that they could use, or accessing Orange County Transit if we needed it to do something like that. But that's all in their emergency operations plan as not a default, but as an alternative for.
So the city has its own emergency plan,
Yes,
which would include Laguna Woods Village?
Yeah, it includes the entire city, and of which Laguna Woods Village is. And quite frankly, 95 or 7% of the population is within within the gated community. So they understand and it's a specific demographic. It's 55 and up, and they know what our median age is here, and I think it's like 76 or something like this. So it's gone down from 78 when I first started. So
we're getting younger.
Yes, we're getting younger.
I feel younger by the moment.
You look great, but so they take into consideration some of that stuff. But the reality is, in a disaster, we're going to have to be able to provide for our own selves. They recommend for about 3 days, at least minimum, and that means that you have certain supplies on hand: batteries, water, potable water, and food, clothing, to-go bags.
That was what I was going to ask you about, because in the literature for emergency preparedness, everybody talks about a go bag, and then they talk about a stay kit. So what if you're not leaving your house? Say it's not a wildfire, it's an earthquake, and you can't leave. How would residents get information about what to prepare?
Well, on our disaster preparedness task force, we meet every other month. In fact, we meet this month on the 25th on Tuesday, and at 1:30, and we have that information available. We have it available online in our documents folder, where you can look at a list of items that would be really beneficial to have in the case of an emergency like that. We also have links to various vendors that they can sell you first aid kits, disaster preparedness kits, already pre-made to last that 3-day duration, so that you have 2 bags, I guess. You have your to-go bag, and then you have your stay bag. But really, really the stay is mostly making sure that you have, the water that you need to be there. And when we say to stay, sometimes when you have a disaster, the worst thing you can do, especially if your structure is sound, is to go outside and get involved in the chaos that's going on, right? So we would prefer that since you're safe, your structure's safe, just shelter in place, and then you're easier to contact. We can get a head count, know that people are safe, and like the building captain or the good neighbor captain would have that. If people are out and about, then when the first responders are showing up and there's a lot of traffic, heavy equipment sometimes, and these disasters moving around, then it becomes very dangerous for people to drive or walk in that kind of environment, down wires and such. And
You talked about the Good Neighbor project,
Right.
The captains. Can you tell us more about that? Because I know when I moved here, I had a block captain across the street
Sure.
from me, but they kind of aged in place and moved back to Seattle.
Yes.
And I haven't had a new block captain. What is the new program about?
Well, we're going to find out, and I'll tell you why. Because Wednesday, the day after our disaster preparedness task force meeting, we're having our first meeting that I've had since I've been here for 3 years with both of those groups, Good Neighbor Captain and Block Captain. Because one of the things I can see the purpose in why they exist and the benefit, but what I was thinking is that if we, instead of bifurcating this, and why don't we just combine the responsibilities? They're not that much different, or more, and make it one position, and maybe shared positions, depending on the size of the block or the building, and what they essentially do is they go to check on their neighbors, to make sure that they're okay, that they don't have any medical needs, and I'm not talking about the usual general everyday, but some sort of emergency medical need where they need to have first responders respond. And a lot of times that's done because they're already calling 911, right? So they know that information. But what'll happen is they gather the information they can on their folks, and then we'll have runners that get that information. They bring it to a centralized point. What the plan was originally is used to the clubhouses as that centralized, collection of information. And then they would also use the clubhouses as a area for first aid to be rendered, from people that have had some training for the people that have been injured. Some of that, it's good in theory, but a lot of times people that are injured may not be able to make it to a clubhouse, so we have to rethink a little bit about that. They have to, maybe treat it where they're at,
Yes.
And especially those people that are bleeding or have a broken leg or something like that. We don't want to exacerbate whatever the injury is or the condition.
So you would bring care to the person?
We would. We would either try to bring care to them, or at least notify the Orange County Fire Authority paramedics that, hey, this, because they're going to look at this and prioritize it like they do, right?
Right.
And they would say, okay, is this, because somebody, if they're not breathing, it's like ABCs, airway, breathing, and circulation. If there's something wrong with their blood, they're bleeding out, an injury, then they got to stop that, right? And so after they prioritize the health or the condition of these folks, they would be treating them, right?
Now, you talked about a meeting on Wednesday for people who would be interested in becoming a good neighbor captain. Where will that meeting be, at what time?
That's at Clubhouse 7 from 10 to 2. And what we have done is we initially sent out invitations to those people we already know that were on the list.
Okay.
But we had well over 100 people on the list, and in trying to contact folks and seeing if they're still interested or still available, we didn't get that many responses, obviously. And so now we're realizing that list is stale.
Okay.
And so one of the things is, like anything else, is you have to assess what the status is right now. And then do a needs assessment to find out what they need. But more than that, I'm looking at to find out what the expectations are, from each of those roles that they signed up for originally, and then discuss with them the potential of combining those roles, and then looking at how we can facilitate training to assist them in helping to do the jobs that they volunteered for.
So if people are interested, they could come to Clubhouse 7 on Wednesday?
Yeah, we announced it, and so we advertised it a little bit, on all our local press releases here that we're having this meeting, so that if they are interested in it, sure, we'd love to see them.
Okay. You also talked about Code Red as the internal alert system in the village. How do people sign up for that, just in case somebody isn't part of the system now? Yeah,
there's when we go to our website, in the Laguna Woods Village website, you'll see it down there. If you scroll down, you'll see right up front, the Code Red. And what they do is they click on that, and then it runs them through a online form, and it just has them fill out their general basic contact information, and with emails and phone numbers and such, so that way they can get the messages, these emergency messages, transmitted to them in some fashion.
Okay. If you had to give advice to residents in terms of preparing for the possibility of wildfires, what would you suggest to them?
Well, one of the things I've been really grateful for is how interactive and our community is. One of the things they've established is a concern, because if you go like west of our property into the canyon area, and you'll see a lot of wild growth, right, and trees and such.
I face it.
Okay, yeah. Gate 11 and in that area. And so they've already expressed concerns with landscape maintenance about growth, because we've had such great rain, right? But with it comes a lot more growth. And then once the rain stops and vegetation dries, then now they've got fuel to burn. So, and asking that we have separation from that. Kurt, our landscape maintenance director, has done a good job of reaching out to the county and different districts regarding some of the vegetation that surrounds our area, to make sure that it's at a distance that it doesn't become a hazard for us. And then I think that, and then for people, when they're simple things like when they're barbecuing, or they're, don't play with matches, or when you have your relatives coming over to visit, grandchildren and such, to make sure that they don't light off fireworks in the surrounding area.
Yes, because
especially
there
around
are
the holidays.
trees all over.
Yeah. And you'll see that, obviously in 4th of July, we'll see that, New Year's Eve, wherever, they celebrate here, right? There's always a risk for fire if you're going to be lighting off incendiary devices of any kind. So, we tell them not to do that, right? And then that's another thing they can do to prepare themselves. And then just be observant. And like I say, if you see something, say something, but it doesn't only mean for crime or suspicious activity. Sometimes people will see a plume of smoke.
Yes.
And we all know where there's smoke, generally there's fire.
There's fire, yes.
So, make that notification to the fire department right away, and they will come out right away and check it.
We've talked about emergency preparedness today, but that isn't all that the security department does.
No.
Just briefly, can you tell us some of the other things that, first of all, maybe how many people are in the security department?
We have about 30 what we would call security patrol officers and supervisors, and then we have a lot of what I call our gate ambassadors, right, our program. So if you looked at what human resources would call FTEs, or full-time equivalents, we probably have about 104 full-time equivalents, but a lot of those people, are part-timers, right?
Okay.
So full-time staff, we have about 30 plus.
And so
staff.
they handle the gate ambassadors.
Yes.
They handle emergency preparedness. What else do they handle?
They handle day-to-day operations, what calls for service. What most people don't understand, because they just pick up the phone when they have a leak or an electrical problem. Because we always go out to the neighbor-to-neighbor disputes, or somebody smoking a cigarette, smoke's coming into my manor now, and then deal with those kind of things, parking issues. They also do traffic enforcement here on the property. But after hours, after 5 o'clock in the evening until 8 o'clock in the morning, the people that answer the phone are the security dispatchers. So when you call up for whatever the problem is you're having in your manor, they will call, and then they do what they call a service request, and they fill out a service request for whoever is responsible to fix or maintain that problem, and/or they will also determine whether that problem needs immediate attention, and then they will contact the director or his second in command, and letting them know that, hey, this is a plumbing issue, say, and they only have one bathroom, and this bathroom stuff, clogged, and we need a plumber here now. So they'll approve us to call.
So they're kind of the in-house emergency response system for resident issues
All
after
resident
hours.
issues. And on the weekends.
That's right. We have Saturdays and Sundays.
Yeah. And all holidays, they're here for that too. We work 24/7, so we're here 7 days a week, 24 hours a day.
Okay, I have, I guess, one final question to ask you, Chief. What is the most important thing you want residents to remember from what we talked about today?
I said one of them already. If you see something, say something, right? But I think that, part of the preparation is self-preparation. Make sure that you have what you need in your residence, and that you have already made those contacts, and that you have an emergency contact information available should we need to have an emergency contact for you. We have that. And then, and I think the other thing is that I'm a creative person, and I've always been one of these people that always looks for new technology, and I'm looking to use technology as a force multiplier so that we have better security, and in fact, we're getting involved in something called the Orange County Real-Time Operations Center, and that's to help hook up all of our cameras so that the Sheriff's Department has access, can view real-time what's going on in a situation, and then respond with the appropriate number of vehicles that they need and the resources they need to handle a situation that we're dealing with. So they're in good hands. I know what it takes to protect a city. This is a city.
This is 18,000 people.
4 square miles, 18,000 people, 12,000 plus homes, and I take that job seriously.
Well, Chief, I really appreciate the time that you spent with us today, and you are definitely a very busy man. Thank you for your efforts on behalf of the village.
Thank you.